Hello and welcome to the show. As Kevin Brogan will join me in just a moment to have a look at what happened over the weekend. We'll hear that the two big auction capitals clear over 70%. The market is continuing to improve. Kevin Brogan with all the details in just one moment.
In today's market, great ideas alone simply aren't enough, but innovative execution can hand you a real competitive advantage. Nightlight is a cutting-edge illuminated signboard by Printforce that offers round-the-clock visibility and features that maximise advertising space, improving your exposure. Buyers can now see the full picture, day or night, with Nightlight's edge-to-edge illuminated surface, which utilises environmentally friendly, scratch-resistant technology. Now available in 6x4 and 8x4. Nightlight is as versatile as you need to be in today's market. Let your clients know you're working day and night for them, and then prove it with Nightlight.
And Kevin Brogan from CoreLogic joins us once again. Some really good news about the particularly Sydney and Melbourne markets, Kevin.
Yeah, look, both of those markets returning a clearance rate above 70%, 78.5% for Sydney and 74% from Melbourne, off a slightly increased volume of auctions this week.
Yeah, well, we'll get to those numbers in a moment. Brisbane also at 41.7%. Still a few to report there, so that will likely come back to a normal sort of a market. Adelaide looking very strong at 56.7%, I have to say, Kevin.
Yeah, look, Adelaide has continued to perform at a reasonably consistent level all through the market softening, and although that rate is a fair bit below Sydney and Melbourne, it is certainly at a level that we've become accustomed to seeing in the Adelaide market.
Okay, well, a total number of auctions, 1,115, and a fair number reported already at 872, and of course that does change, as you point out, each week, and correctly so too, Kevin, but we'll see what happens there. Canberra 55.6%. So all around, pretty good early results.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the way we measure that is to look at a weighted combined capital city average, and that's sort of tripped over 70% at 71.2%. So that is showing that across the board we are actually seeing a confidence that we haven't seen up until May returning to the market.
And I noticed in some of your commentary as well, Kevin, you mentioned that units had been outstripping houses in terms of the clearance rate over the last 3 or 4 weeks. That seems to have reversed this week, slightly.
Yeah, look, absolutely. So that is a combined capital city. And when you sort of drill down into that and have a look at the two big markets, in Sydney, the clearance rate for houses and units is actually very similar. It's the Melbourne market where we see a significant variation. 77% clearance rate for houses and 68% clearance for units. And I think that's that's a significant enough difference to have an impact on the aggregated figure for the country. And it really is down to the fact that in Melbourne, some of those market segments for units are characterised by a very plentiful supply of units, and that's acting as a sort of downward influence on the clearance rate and prices.
Very good. Well, let's have a look at the Sydney sub-regions firstly. Walk us through that. Eastern suburbs, very strong at 93.3%, and even Northern Beaches at 92.6%.
Yeah, look, both of those suburbs, I mean, certainly recently Northern Beaches has been a consistent, strong performer. The eastern suburbs, I suppose, deservedly now topping the list for a week because although it's not been the top performer in terms of Sydney sub-regions for a little while, it's been there or thereabouts for a long time. Really quite a resilient market through some of the softer market period that we've been looking at.
Any other comments about the Sydney sub-regions at all, Kevin?
Yeah, look, I mean, there are a couple of regions that are sort of making the sort of top end of the table, which we haven't seen for a little while. I mean, if you have a look at Sutherland, for example, Quite volatile results sometimes out of Sutherland because of the low level of auction activity. But even so, we've seen Sutherland sort of near the top of the league table, so to speak, of subregions, and this week again above 80%. Even though we do see volatility with lower results, the fact is Sutherland has sort of had a mention in dispatches for the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, our top sale out of Sydney comes from Wahroonga, 79 Junction Road, 3,360,000. McGrath's selling this one, Alex and James, 5-bedroom home. A beautiful sunlit family home, this one, really hidden. I think this is a cul-de-sac as well, Kevin, is that right?
Yes, look, it is. I mean, this is at the end of a cul-de-sac. I mean, it's a almost 1,600 square metre block of land with a tennis court. This property last sold in December 2005 for 1.64 million, just to give you an idea of sort of capital growth over the last sort of 14 years. Obviously, a highly regarded and sought after suburb, great location. We have seen a bit of price pressure in this location over the last year. The median price in Wahroonga is 1.8 million, and that's down about 14% since peak.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the Melbourne market now, and we'll bring up our stats for the sub-regions. Inner South performing very well, 89%. They're great figures.
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, we have seen with this market resurgence, in terms of clearance rates, a greater variability across the regions in Melbourne. Look, sitting above 80% also Mornington Peninsula. Same sort of comments as for Sutherland about there being volatility there, but nonetheless, we've seen some strong results out of the Mornington Peninsula for a few weeks now. And the Outer East at 87.2% again is another area providing consistently strong results. Again, it's low volumes, but we are now perhaps on the trail to higher volumes for spring. Gradual increase in volumes now, but hopefully that'll accelerate as we move over the next few weeks.
Yes, you get the feeling, don't you, that the market is definitely strengthening. Week on week now we're seeing, both growth in numbers, but also a lot more confidence coming from buyers as well. So it does bode well for the future, I think, Kevin.
Yeah, look, it does. I think what we're all watching very keenly for is when we see a significant increase in volume, whether that has a downward pressure on clearance rates. Obviously, this week we've seen a slight increase in both Sydney and Melbourne markets, and it looks as if the clearance rate has been fairly resilient to that increase.
Well, of course, it's not going to continue to climb all the time. It has to slow down at some stage or reach some kind of a peak, but, I don't think we're there yet. Let's have a look at our top Melbourne sale. This is a delightful 1920s private family home. Beautiful presentation. I've got to say that the top sale out of Sydney was in Wahroonga, and this one is in Wahroonga, spelt a little bit differently, but just with a double A, in Moranbah. 2,265,000. Jealous Craig selling this on, Michael and Lydia. 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom.
Yeah, look, I mean, this Moranbah, for those who aren't familiar with it, I mean, it's about 15 kilometres southeast of Melbourne. So, I mean, it's in a pocket that is highly desirable. We have seen some pressure on prices, over the last 15 months here. This is a beautiful house, as you say, built in the 1920s. It's retained period features, but it's been renovated and extended very significantly, since it was built. I think an interesting thing here, I mean, Moranbah has had a 16% increase in population over the last 5 years, which I think is worth noting as a sort of testament as to its popularity.
Very good. Okay, well, it's interesting as we move on with our top sales. Let's have a look at top sale out of Queensland. And once again, it's not Brisbane, it's the Gold Coast, which is exactly what happened last weekend. And I think the second top sale in Queensland came from the Sunshine Coast, which is where the top sale came from last week.
Yeah, look, we have seen the top three sales in Queensland are actually in as you say, Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast. And there obviously is a highest sale for Brisbane, but that was at $780,000.
Yeah.
So it's quite a long way behind those top sales that we see in the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast.
Yeah, well, the top sale that we're going to feature out of Queensland was on the Gold Coast, as we said. It's a large waterfront home, 65 the Sovereign Mile at Paradise Point. Actually, I think this is Sovereign Island, more correctly. 2,760,000 sold by the professionals, 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms and 4 car. What a delightful home, right on the canal with those beautiful water views, Kevin.
Absolutely. So as you point out, this is on Sovereign Island. So obviously the construction of Sovereign Island was to ensure that every house had waterfront. This one does as well. So the suburb is Paradise Point, but obviously Sovereign Island is where you see the highest value properties. Yes. I understand you can count Clive Palmer as one of your neighbours if you're living in Paradise Point.
Whether he lives there or not, I'm not quite sure.
I'm not sure. But look, this block of land was purchased in 2013 for $950,000, and then a house of some 700 square metres of living space has been constructed shortly thereafter. I think 2014 and 15. So it's a very modern new home. Very high spec fit out, and that 40-metre water frontage with a deep water pontoon, a key feature.
Okay, we'll take you to our top Canberra sale. This one is in Canberra's inner north, 61 White Crescent. I guess it's Crescent at Campbell, 1,450,000 Bell Properties. Greg and Samantha selling this one, a 4-bedroom home. Quite established area, very well sought after, Campbell, I think.
Oh, look, it certainly is. I mean, it is very close into the city centre of Canberra. This property sold for almost $1 million less when it first sold. Newly constructed, 2001, was sold for $485,000. It's only about 3 kilometres east of the Canberra city centre. Median house price here, $1.28 million. And that's actually an increase of 6.5% over the last year. So, we've seen obviously some significant falls in value in Sydney. But, this area of Canberra has really kept its end up, I suppose, over that period.
Top Adelaide sale, character, charm and sophistication is how the agents describe it, and I've got to say I agree with them. 1 Arundel Road at Brighton, 902,000 Harcourt's James and Megan selling this 3-bedroom home. I love what they've done with this home. It's really very stylish. Kevin, get your take on that. Well, tell me a bit about Brighton.
Yeah, so Brighton is, as you might expect, it's not the only Brighton in Australia. No. It is a seaside suburb. This property is probably, almost a kilometre from the seafront, but it is considered a seaside suburb. It has remained fairly popular. It's only about 15 kilometres to the west of or southwest of Adelaide city centre. Look, this property really does follow a little bit of a theme in relation to the highest sales we've been reporting out of Adelaide. It does retain a lot of those character features and the period charm. It's a sandstone-fronted bungalow, and it's been significantly renovated and extended to provide a really sort of entertainment-focused property, I suppose, of very high specification.
Okay, right. Well, that's it for this week. Just summarising, our weighted average from CoreLogic is 71.2%. Really good performances out of Sydney and Melbourne. Kevin Brogan will return and join me on Friday when we'll have a look at the final numbers. Obviously, they will dip a little bit below 70%, you would think, Kevin? Mid-60s?
Oh, they probably will. They're going to come down below 70% on the weighted average. But as you pointed out, the collection rate this week has been really quite strong. So hopefully the adjustments aren't going to be too significant.
Excellent. Kevin Brogan from CoreLogic joins us every Monday and every Friday with the most comprehensive wrap on what's happening with auctions right around the country. Kevin Brogan, thank you very much. Look forward to talking to you on Friday, my friend.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Kevin.
Did you know you can save up to 70% on your staff costs by outsourcing the low-value, repeatable tasks so your team can focus on growing your business? Beepo is an outsourcing provider focused on the real estate industry. With an English-speaking, tertiary qualified and fully trained team in the Philippines, Beepo will give your business the boost it needs to start growing and returning value to you. For more information, visit beepo.com.au.